The morning air smelled of smoke and earth. People who lived near the farms of northern Colorado woke to a silence that felt wrong. No birds sang. No tractors ran. The sunrise came, gold and calm, but it could not hide the black ribbons that hung above the fields. Mason Hale stepped out of the armored vehicle and stood where the asphalt met the scorched dirt. He had been awake for more hours than he could count, and his uniform still showed the long lines of the trip. He looked at the fields like a man who had seen too many maps and not enough mornings. Claire Porter walked beside him. She was an intelligence officer, thin and steady. She had not stopped moving since the call came the night before. They moved through the place with slow, careful steps. At first glance, the ground looked like any other field after a bad fire. But closer in, the signs told a different story. Corn stalks were cut cleanly, as if a giant blade had passed through. Metal fences were bent away from a single direction. Deep pockmarks in the soil were stamped by something that did not belong to any human machine. "Look," Claire said. She pointed to a dark strip in the sky like a wound. It was not smoke from fires, it was residue. Mason felt his mouth go dry. He used his hand to shield his eyes and scanned the horizon. Far above, a band of nothing seemed to hang where the air had been altered. Crowds had gathered at the edge of the devastation. Some people knelt by makeshift graves. Others stood and watched with faces that had gone very still. A child held a stuffed toy, its fur black at the edges from heat. An old man wept openly in the sunlight. The thing that had come from space had not cared about names or ages. The local governor met them with a voice that tried to stay firm. "We lost many," he said. "It hit farms, houses, and the supply depot. Schools were opened this morning. There are children." He lowered his head. "Do not know who did this. We need answers." Mason took out a small device and set it on the ground. It looked like a meter, but it read things that mattered. He watched the numbers move. He heard his own breath. He thought of the plan that had been cataloged in a drawer for years, a plan no one wanted to use. The plan was named Operation Iron Horizon. "Is it alien?" asked the governor. His hands trembled. Claire looked at the governor and then at Mason. She did not try to hide the truth. "Signatures match the archeal pattern," she said. "Energy field, pulse width, and the waste pattern in the air. This was not an accident." Murmurs spread through the crowd. The archeal dominion had been a rumor for a long time. They were a name that came in files and quiet briefings. The dominion was clever. They moved like shadows, often taking planets before anyone knew what had happened. Most of the time they left no notice, no flare, no public trace. To be called out by name in daylight made the skin crawl. Mason let the silence sit for a moment. He watched the people. A woman hugged her son so tightly he could not breathe. A squad of soldiers walked by with rigid faces. He thought about the night they had planned, not for this farm, but for the idea of it. He thought of the council inside its tall glass tower, where leaders from across Earth argued for calm. At the command center, screens showed the strike's path. Satellites that once whispered soft signals across the atmosphere now drew a hard line in blue. The strike had not been random. It had cut into agricultural land, cutting food stores and morale. It hit a place where the harvest was heavy and the people were unguarded. The message was clear: test, weaken, scare. In a small trailer that served as the temporary field office, Mason and Claire spread data across a table. Paper maps were old comfort, but the new feeds layered on them told the whole story. A pattern of arcs, then a pause, then a swell of power where the strike landed. It was as if someone had drawn a careful line across a map and then removed one of the pins in the board. "Why here?" asked Claire. She tapped a point on the map near a network of farms and a logistics hub. "Why a farming region?" Mason answered without looking up. "Because it hurts everyone," he said. "Food, safety, trust. It makes the country look weak. It asks us, how will you feed your people when the lights go out?" Claire thought of the files she had read in the dark hours. She had seen diplomacy notes that praised the archeal for subtlety. She had seen intercepted messages that hinted at a goal: slow control. If the Dominion struck where people lived and worked, humans might huddle, keep their heads down, and let the world piece itself back together in the ways the Dominion liked. Back in the city, the council met with flashing cameras and angry voices. Leaders argued about calm and retaliation as if one could simply choose one without the other. The council had once been a shield, meant to keep humans from repeating the old wars of the past. Now that shield felt thin. Mason stood at the back of the chamber and watched each face. He had been taught to wait, to hear, to hold. But he also had hands that fit a weapon more easily than a quill. He had seen the faces at the farm and the small, precise damage that proved the strike's origin. He had a list of things that intelligence could confirm and things that needed to be proven. Claire stood by him, leaning on a chair with a tablet under her arm. "We traced the energy signature," she said to those closest. "We have fragments of the device that carried the pulse. It matches archaeal tech." Gasps moved through the room. For weeks officials had worried. What if the Dominion moved openly? For years, human forces had been kept small and cautious. Many argued that humanity should not scream before it was ready. Mason felt that same tired argument in the room. He did not have the luxury of caution today. People had died. "Then we do not waste time," Mason said. His voice was even. "We mobilize, we set defenses, we tell the Dominion that striking Earth will cost them." An older delegate, soft-spoken and careful, argued that they must not declare war. "We do not yet have proof in their space," she said. "We must not start a conflict we cannot control." Claire tightened her jaw. "They left proof here," she said, voice low but sharp. "They left us the smell on the soil. They left the waste in the air. They sent a message by choosing the farms." Outside, the sky had gone from bright to thin with dusk. Mason thought about the men and women on their feet, working shifts, sleeping in barracks and waiting for orders. He thought about children and about how a night can be longer than months when the future looks uncertain. The president declared a state of emergency by mid-afternoon. Military units moved to secure the agricultural center and to protect the routes that fed cities. The call went out for aid. Nations that often argued now sent supplies without the usual hesitation. It was a small comfort. At the base, Captain Laura Briggs stood on the bridge of the warship Resolute. The ship was older than some of the carrier groups the world had once built, but it was sturdy. The crew moved through their training with a focus that felt sharp enough to cut. They were not yet allowed to cross certain boundaries, but they were ready to defend. Laura watched the feed from the farm and the speeches from the council. She had an officer's habit of cataloging small details. She noticed a pattern in how the Dominion struck. They tested with a small slice, then withdrew and watched. That meant they wanted reaction. They wanted to see how humans would answer. In a warehouse-turned-command post, scientists and technicians worked with fragments. There were pieces that sang when they were touched. Some bits had traces of molecules that came from nowhere on human charts. Claire moved among them like a careful nurse. Each small discovery added weight to the evidence that someone from outside had pierced the sky to make a point. At night, the star map felt crowded and cold. Mason stood on the roof of the command center and watched a sky full of bright points that might be ships, might be satellites, might be empty light. He felt a small, honest fear, not the kind that broke men, but the kind that sharpened them. He thought of his sister who lived on the other side of the Atlas. He thought of the farms that fed cities and the children that would ask simple questions. He did not want a war. He wanted safety. But when things moved into the realm of killing and signals and tests, innocence was gone. At 3 in the morning, a message arrived that cut through cautious talk. A small, remote listening post had caught a burst of communication directed outward. It was not spoken in any human language. The pattern, though, matched what Claire had seen in files, a cadence that the archaeal used to coordinate. For the first time, humans had not only an answer in their soil, but a voice in the sky. Mason read the report and felt the cold rise in his blood. The message was short, like a single clear command. It did not threaten, it measured. It was as if the Dominion had tapped the walls, called a name, and listened. The council called an emergency session. Cameras were turned off inside the chamber. The leaders gathered around and the talk moved from public words to hard choices. Should they send envoys to ask for explanation? Should they strike first to show that humans could answer? Or should they build a wall and hope the cracks closed? Claire recommended a course that was both careful and firm. "Give them a chance to explain in a controlled environment," she said. "We take a small, strong delegation. We do not go as beggars. We go to make one thing very clear. You test us at your risk." Mason agreed. He thought of the farmers and the burned fields. He thought of the quiet grief that had settled like dust. He thought of the people who would not sleep until they knew the world was safe. He knew they could not let the Dominion think humans would not answer. The plan would not satisfy everyone. To go to the Dominion's council was to walk into a lion's den. To go unarmed would be foolish. To go with massive force would be to play into exactly the fear the Dominion hoped to create. The delegation had to be small and precise. It had to carry proof and a warning. They named the team, Mason Hale as head, Claire Porter as intelligence lead, and Captain Laura Briggs to command the escort. A few others were chosen for skills that mattered: diplomacy, translation, and a quiet ability to see traps. They would take what the council wanted to call an envoy, but everyone on the team knew the truth. This was a message. The night before they left, Mason walked the field again. He did not want to carry the faces of the dead with him, yet their looks followed. A child's shoe lay near a fence post, half buried in ash. He picked it up and put it in his pocket. It was a small gesture, private and heavy. Claire packed a small case of data drives in a box that had once held a newer thing. She thought of how fragile proof was, how it could be burned or erased. She thought of the people who would need those drives to see what she had seen. On a hot plate, she warmed a cup of instant coffee and stared at the steam until it vanished. At dawn, they boarded a transport. The whole world watched with different eyes. Some saw a brave step. Others saw a reckless one. Mason sat in the seat and felt the engines warm around him. He did not speak much. His thoughts moved like a slow tide. Who would listen, who would laugh, and who would drop a hammer? When the craft lifted, the farms below became small, delicate things like toy models. The burned lines were sharp against the green. Mason thought of the phrase that had been used in briefings. This is not a war yet, but they were going into the council to say that it could be. The stars outside were cold and steady as they crossed the gulf. Mason looked at Claire and Captain Briggs. He saw the same tired, calm focus in each face. They were a small band of people carrying a message. They were also a promise. Earth would not be ignored. They did not know what awaited them beyond the next bend of light. They only knew what they had left behind: one scar on the soil, many quiet voices, and the will to be heard. The craft hummed. The map on the screen slid into shape. The journey had begun. The transport ship moved through space with a steady hum, quiet but strong. Inside, the small human delegation sat in their seats, watching the stars drift by. General Mason Hale kept his eyes on the front display, where the map showed their path toward the Archeal Dominion's Central Council world. He did not trust what waited for them, but he did not fear it either. He had seen the burned fields of Colorado. Fear had no place in him now. Claire Porter sat across from him with her tablet in hand. She kept checking the data again and again, even though she already knew every line. Captain Laura Briggs sat near the door, calm and steady, her hands folded on her lap. The rest of the team remained silent. They had trained for high-risk missions, but none had ever walked into an alien ruling hall to accuse its leaders of an attack. The ship lights were soft, and the crew spoke in low voices. Mason heard an officer say they would reach the Dominion's border in 2 hours. Past that point, they needed clearance or they risked being targeted. Mason wondered if the Dominion would allow them to pass peacefully. He doubted it. For a long time, there had been a thin line between Earth and the Dominion. The Dominion liked secrets. They liked shadows. They rarely spoke with outsiders unless they wanted something. Now humanity had something to say, and the Dominion would need to listen. Claire leaned forward slightly. "When we get there, they will play calm," she said. "They will pretend they know nothing." Mason nodded. "And we will show them the proof." Laura glanced between them. "Do you think they already expect us?" "Yes," Mason said. "They always expect everything." The others fell quiet again. When the ship reached the Dominion's border, a bright blue wave scanned across their hull. A voice filled the cabin, strange and smooth, not fully human in tone. "Identify purpose," it said. Mason gave a simple answer: "Human delegation requesting entry to the Archeal Grand Council." "We travel under treaty law." There was a long pause. The crew noticed the shift in the ship's vibrations. Weapons from somewhere out there were likely locked on them. Everyone stayed silent. Finally, the voice spoke again. "Entry granted. You will follow the path provided. Any deviation will be treated as a hostile act." Mason exhaled once. Not relief, not fear, just readiness. The ship glided along the narrow path the Dominion allowed. On the main display, strange structures appeared in the distance. Rings of silver and green curved platforms, tall towers that shone like wet stone. Everything looked grown, not built. Claire watched with a tense expression. "They build like they think," she murmured. "Curved, quiet, secret." The council world appeared next. It was a planet of deep blue oceans and shimmering landmasses. Ships of many shapes circled above it. The human transport felt small among them. When they landed, the square beneath them looked smooth like glass, but when Mason touched it, it felt warm. The air smelled faintly of metal and something like rain. Dominion guards stood waiting. They were tall, with long limbs and eyes that shone faintly. Their movements were graceful but sharp. One of them stepped forward. "You will follow," the guard said. "The council is convened." The humans walked in a tight group. Laura kept her eyes moving. Claire watched every guard, every shadow, every detail. Mason walked at the front with a firm, steady pace. He would not show fear. He would not show uncertainty. Earth had sent him here because he knew what had to be done. They entered the council hall. It rose like a massive dome, glowing from within. Inside, the floor seemed alive with soft lines of light that shifted under their feet. The council members sat on high curved seats arranged in a ring. Their robes shimmered. Their eyes were cold. One counselor spoke first. "You come with much urgency, humans. Explain your purpose." Mason stepped forward. His voice was calm and even. "Earth was attacked." A murmur spread through the hall, soft and sharp. Claire placed a small device on the floor. It projected a clear, large image of the strike zone, the scorched fields, the floating residue, the precise cut lines. Then it showed the fragments they had recovered. Then the energy signature. "This is archaeal technology," Claire said. Her voice did not shake. "No other species uses this pattern, shape, or energy decay." Another counselor leaned forward. "Are you accusing the Dominion?" "Yes," Mason said. "I am." Gasps rose again. Some counselors laughed softly, others looked annoyed. The oldest counselor spoke next. "Humans make bold claims, perhaps too bold. What if this was the act of an enemy seeking to frame us?" Mason's jaw tightened slightly. "The strike was deliberate. It hit farms, houses, children died. Do not insult us with guesses. You know your own weapons." A wave of low, tense sound moved through the chamber. The Dominion did not like being spoken to this way, but Mason did not care. Then the council leader asked, "And what do you want, General of Earth?" Mason stepped forward with slow, steady steps. Everyone in the hall watched him, even the guards stood still. "We want the truth, and we want the attacks to stop," Mason said. "If you strike Earth again, the cost will be heavy. We will defend ourselves with everything we have." The leader's eyes narrowed. "Earth does not understand its place. You are new in the stars. You are growing fast, too fast. That makes some uneasy." Claire caught the meaning immediately. "So someone struck us because we are growing." No one answered. The silence was the answer. Mason looked around the hall. He felt something shift in him, something cold and clear. He understood now. The Dominion feared Earth. They feared humans because humans adapted quickly. Humans survived. Humans learned faster than most species they had met. And so the Dominion chose to test them, to weaken them early. Mason spoke again, now louder. "You hit our world, you killed our people, and now humanity comes for yours." The council rose in outrage. Voices echoed through the dome. Some accused humanity of threats. Others called for the humans to be removed. But Mason did not move. Neither did Claire or Laura. The council leader finally called for silence. "Your words are dangerous, General." Mason's voice dropped into a steady tone. "Dangerous is what happens when you attack our home. We came here to tell you one thing: Earth will not sit quietly. We will not break. We will not disappear. If the Dominion brings war, we will end it." The hall fell into silence. Deep, heavy silence. The leader finally spoke. "Your delegation may leave. The council will consider your accusation." "Consider it quickly," Mason said, "because humanity already has." The guards led them out of the hall. No one spoke until they reached the ship. Claire brushed her hair back with a shaking hand. "They knew," she whispered. "They knew everything. They planned it." "I know," Mason said. "They will attack again," Laura said. "Yes," Mason answered, "unless we strike first." The ship lifted off the council world. The Dominion allowed them to leave without trouble. That made Mason uneasy. Too easy, too smooth, too silent. As they moved away from the planet, Claire checked the communication logs. Something new appeared in the data stream, a coded message. Dominion spacing used to mark troop movement. She looked up sharply. "General," she said, "they are mobilizing fleets." Mason closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them with calm determination. "Then it starts." Back on Earth, the skies above Colorado were quiet again, but the people were not. The government had begun moving resources. Military bases buzzed with activity. The warship Resolute prepared for deployment. Captain Briggs had already ordered her crew to ready every system. When Mason's ship landed on Earth, the Council called him for a report, but the people of Earth already knew. They had seen the expression on his face as he walked down the ramp. It told the whole story. Negotiation was over. Claire delivered the data. Laura met with Fleet Command. Mason stood at the window of the Council Tower looking out at the horizon. The sky looked peaceful, blue, clean, but he knew it would not stay that way. Humanity had crossed a line. The Dominion had crossed one first. Now the truth was clear to both sides. Earth would not bow, Earth would fight. In the council room, a leader asked Mason quietly, "Are we ready for what comes next?" Mason answered without turning from the window, "We will be." Outside, the people of Earth moved with purpose. Soldiers trained, engineers prepared ships, civilians donated supplies. Every nation, even the quiet ones, now understood the danger. War was not here yet, but it was coming. And when it came, humanity would meet it with full strength. Mason took a deep breath. The memory of the burned fields of Colorado remained strong in his mind. The smoke, the silence, the loss, he whispered to himself, barely audible, "We will answer." The sun dipped behind the distant hills. Lights flickered on across the city. The world stood at the edge of something it had never seen before, and Earth did not step back. It waited, it watched, and it prepared for the day humanity would strike back. The days after the delegation returned from the Dominion were heavy and tense. People across Earth sensed a change in the air. News reports spoke in careful tones. Citizens gathered in parks, schools, and shops to watch updates on large screens. They all knew something was coming, something larger than anything their world had faced in centuries. General Mason Hale worked from early morning until late at night. His steps were quiet but firm. His voice stayed calm, but every order he gave carried weight. He knew there was no more time to wait, no more time to hope the Dominion would step back from what they had started. Claire Porter worked beside him day after day. She studied every message the Dominion sent, every small shift in their communication lines. She saw troop movement patterns, coded signals, and sudden silences in areas that had once been active. All of it pointed to one truth: the Dominion was preparing for war. Captain Laura Briggs stayed with her crew aboard the Resolute. The ship stood in orbit like a silent guardian. Engineers worked around the clock. Soldiers trained until their bodies shook with exhaustion. The ship carried a mood that was steady but intense. Everyone knew they would soon face something they had never seen before. Late one night, Claire entered the main briefing room with a new report. Mason looked up from a digital map. She placed the small device on the table. "It is confirmed," she said. "The Dominion gathered 3 fleets on the far side of their space. The pattern matches their attack formations." Mason nodded. "How long until they move?" "It could be days," Claire answered. "Maybe hours." Laura entered then, her steps quick but controlled. "The Resolute is ready," she said. "Weapons, shields, engines, the crew is prepared for deployment." Mason looked at them both. "Then we begin." He called for a meeting with the Earth Council. The chamber filled with representatives from every major nation. Some looked tired, some looked afraid, others looked determined. Mason spoke clearly. "The Dominion struck our world. They gathered fleets. They are preparing to attack more human colonies. We must act now. We cannot wait for them to hit us again." One council member asked, "Are we strong enough to face them?" Mason answered without hesitation, "We are strong enough to defend ourselves, and we are strong enough to strike where it matters." Silence spread across the room. The decision pressed down like a great weight. Then the council leader said, "Earth authorizes Operation Iron Horizon." The words traveled through every military channel in seconds. Across Earth and its orbiting stations, warships ignited their engines. The Resolute led the first wave. Smaller craft formed neat lines behind it. Supply ships moved into position. The sky above the planet filled with movement. People on the surface looked up and watched the bright trails. Some whispered prayers, others held their loved ones. Everyone felt the same mix of fear and hope. On the Resolute, Laura stood at the center of the bridge, her hands rested behind her back. "Set course for Dominion space," she said. "Aye, Captain," her navigator replied. The ship turned slowly, the stars shifting outside the windows. Mason and Claire joined Laura as the engines warmed. The hum grew stronger. The crew checked systems with quiet, focused voices. "Do you think they expect us?" Claire asked softly. Mason nodded. "Yes. But they do not expect how far we are willing to go." The ship pushed forward, breaking past the edge of Earth's controlled space. Other ships followed in formation. It was the largest human fleet ever launched. Hours passed. The stars grew brighter, sharper. The path ahead led directly to Dominion territory. As they approached the border, signals flickered on the screens. "Dominion beacons active," a communications officer said. Laura stepped forward. "All ships prepare for possible contact." Mason watched the displays closely. Claire did the same, her eyes scanning every shift. Then for a long moment nothing happened. The Dominion did not challenge them at the border. "They want us deeper inside," Claire whispered. "They want to choose the battlefield." "And we will choose our own," Mason replied. The fleet kept moving. Hours turned into half a day. Then something appeared on the screen, a cluster of ships, Dominion vessels. They looked like curved blades glowing faintly with green light. Their shapes were smooth and cold, like things grown in darkness. They moved with a strange elegance. "Dominion fleet approaching," the officer said. Laura stood tall at the center of the bridge. "Hold formation." The Dominion ships moved closer. Their weapons glowed, then a message came through. A voice, smooth and hollow: "Turn back, you walk into a place where humans do not belong." Mason stepped forward. "Earth does not turn back, not today," the voice replied. "Then you will be broken." Lights flashed across the screens as Dominion ships prepared to fire. Laura raised her hand. "All ships brace." The first wave of green light shot through space. The Resolute shook violently. Alarms rang, panels flickered. "Shields holding," a crew member shouted. Laura responded quickly. "Return fire." The Resolute unleashed bright bursts of energy. Human ships joined the attack. The sky felt alive with motion, light, and sound. Dominion ships moved quickly, trying to circle the fleet. But humans adapted faster than they expected. Smaller vessels darted between the enemy lines, hitting weak points the Dominion rarely protected. Mason watched the battle unfold. He saw fear in some of the newer officers, but he also saw strength. Humanity had always learned by doing, and now, in open war, they learned even faster. One Dominion cruiser exploded, sending a wave of bright shards across space. Another fell when Laura ordered a precise strike on its engines. But the Dominion fought hard too. A human escort ship was hit and spun out of formation. Claire watched with tight breath until the small vessel stabilized again. After nearly an hour, the enemy fleet began to retreat. "They are pulling back," Claire said. "No," Mason answered. "They are regrouping." Laura looked at him. "We cannot stop now, we push forward." Mason nodded. "Yes, we cannot give them time to strike Earth again." The battle left many human ships damaged, but none destroyed. Crews worked quickly to repair systems. The Resolute dimmed lights in some sections to preserve power. Claire studied the scans of the retreating Dominion vessels. "They intended to slow us down," she said, "not stop us." "And they failed," Mason replied. The fleet continued deeper into Dominion space. The stars there looked colder, emptier. Strange structures floated like giant shells, abandoned or secret. The deeper they went, the more Mason felt the Dominion watching. Somewhere out there, beyond the next cluster of stars, was the place where the Dominion made their decisions, the place where the order to strike Earth had been given. Mason was determined to reach it. On the third day of travel, Claire found something in the incoming data. She called Mason and Laura to her workstation. "I think I found where the command signal came from," she said. A display lit up, showing a system deep inside Dominion territory. "Their command world," Laura whispered. Mason stared at the map. "If we take this world, the Dominion will lose their ability to direct the war. Their fleets will scatter, their control will weaken." Claire nodded. "This is where we go, this is where we end it." Laura returned to the bridge and gave new orders to the fleet. The ships shifted position. Engines lit with bright white flame. The final path had been set. As they moved closer, resistance grew stronger. Dominion ships attacked in waves. Human vessels fought back with everything they had. Soldiers on each ship worked long hours, barely resting. Food tasted dull. Sleep came in short, restless pieces, but the spirit of the fleet stayed strong. They had come too far to turn back. During a quiet moment, Mason walked through one of the ship's corridors. He saw young crew members sitting against the wall, tired but alert. One of them looked up and asked softly, "General, do you think we can win?" Mason paused. He thought of the burned farms. He thought of the people of Earth watching the sky. "Yes," he said, "we can win, and we will." The young crew member nodded slowly, a small spark of hope returning to his eyes. Hours later, the command world appeared in the distance. It shone with green light surrounded by a thick ring of defense ships. Claire whispered, "They are waiting for us." Laura straightened, "And we are ready for them." The human fleet moved into formation. Mason felt the tension rise in his chest. This battle would decide everything, for Earth, for the people who had died. For the future, the Resolute pushed forward. The last stage of the journey had begun. The command world of the Dominion grew larger on the screens as the human fleet approached. It shone like a great green lantern in the dark of space. The ring of enemy warships surrounding it looked like sharp teeth waiting to close. Everyone on the Resolute felt the pressure of what was coming. This was the heart of the Dominion. If humanity won here, the war would break open in their favor. If they failed, Earth would be left vulnerable. General Mason Hale stood at the front of the bridge beside Captain Laura Briggs and Claire Porter. The crew worked at their stations with steady hands, though some breaths came fast. Mason looked around at them and felt a heavy but steady pride. They had come far, farther than any human fleet had ever traveled. Laura's voice was calm. "All ships hold formation. We do not fire until the order is given." "Yes, Captain," her officers replied. Claire studied the incoming data. "Their defenses are strong," she said quietly. "Stronger than anything we have faced so far." Mason nodded. "And this is where they believe we will stop, but we will not." The Dominion did not wait long. A deep rumble echoed through the ship as enemy weapons charged. Lights flashed across the screens. A voice came through the communication line, cold and hollow. "Humans, turn back. You stand before the center of the Dominion. This place is not for you." Mason lifted his chin. "You struck our world. We will not leave until this ends." The voice answered, "Then you will fall." Green light burst from the Dominion fleet. The first wave of energy slammed into the human ships. The Resolute shook violently. Panels flickered and alarms rang. "Shields at 70%, an officer shouted. Laura gave the order at once. "Return fire." Energy bolts shot from the Resolute's cannons. The human fleet opened fire as one. The space between the two sides lit with bright lines and bursts. Ships on both sides moved like dancers in a deadly pattern, but the Dominion had built this battlefield. They had placed their ships exactly where they wanted them. Their defensive lines were tight and hard to break. Claire watched the patterns carefully. "They are funneling us," she said, "trying to force the fleet to move into their strongest fire zone." Laura frowned. "If we go where they want, we lose half our ships." Mason stepped forward. "Then we do not go there." He pointed to a point on the screen just outside the main Dominion formation. "This section looks weaker. If we push through here, we can break the circle." The officers ran quick checks. Claire confirmed it. "It is a risk, but it is possible." Laura nodded sharply. "All ships adjust course. Follow the Resolute. We break through on our terms." The fleet moved fast, shifting direction. Dominion ships tried to adjust, but they were a heartbeat too slow. The Resolute fired with precision, hitting a cruiser at just the right moment. The explosion shook the enemy line. "One down," someone shouted. "Keep pushing," Laura said. Human ships surged through the opening. Enemy fire rained on them from all sides, but they held the line. A smaller human vessel took a direct hit and spun out of formation. The crew cried out, but a second human ship moved in to shield it. Even in battle, humans protected each other. For nearly an hour, the fight raged. Both sides suffered losses. The Dominion fought with cold precision. Humans fought with will and heart, and slowly the tide began to shift. Claire gasped as new information appeared on her screen. "General," she said, "their command signals are unstable. They are struggling to coordinate." Mason felt a spark of hope. "Then this is our moment." He turned to Laura. "Captain, bring us closer to the command world. If we reach its surface, the Dominion fleet will lose central control." Laura nodded. "Understood." The Resolute and several other ships broke away from the main formation, flying straight toward the green-lit world. Enemy fire chased them like a storm, but they did not stop. They pushed faster. For the first time, the Dominion hesitated. Claire whispered, "They did not expect us to get this close." And she was right. As the Resolute neared the world's surface, a massive energy shield appeared, curving like a glowing wall. "Shield detected," an officer yelled. Laura breathed steadily. "Focus all forward weapons. Fire on my mark." The Resolute aimed everything it had. Mason gripped the rail as the ship drew nearer. Laura raised her hand. "Mark!" The ship fired. Bright white light smashed into the shield. The impact shook the entire vessel. The shield rippled but did not break. "Again," Mason said. Laura nodded. "Charge weapons, full power." The Dominion ships rushed in, trying to stop them. Human ships formed a protective ring around the Resolute. The air felt electric with tension. "Fire," Laura commanded. The second strike hit the same spot. The shield flickered violently. Claire watched the readings. "One more, just one more." Laura did not hesitate. "All power to forward cannons." The crew obeyed. Lights dimmed across the ship as energy moved to the weapons. "Fire!" The third strike tore through the shield. The green wall shattered like glass. A wave of shock spread through the Dominion fleet. "We are through," Claire said. "Take us down," Mason ordered. The Resolute descended toward the command world. The atmosphere glowed around them. The surface below looked like a massive city made of stone and green light. Laura kept her hand steady on the controls. "Prepare for landing." The ship touched down in a large square. Dominion troops rushed in, but human soldiers emerged from the ship with strong, clear steps. They were not many, but they carried the resolve of billions. Mason walked at the front with Claire and several other officers. The Dominion forces formed a line but hesitated. They had never seen humans come this far. One Dominion commander stepped forward. "Leave this place. This world is not yours." Mason met his gaze. "You made war on Earth, you killed our people, and now we are here to end it." The commander lifted a glowing weapon. "You cannot end the Dominion." Mason stepped closer. "Watch us." The battle erupted. Human soldiers moved fast, using cover and quick strikes. Dominion troops were strong and skilled, but they were not prepared for the force of the human advance. The sounds of weapons echoed through the square. Smoke drifted into the air. Claire fought beside the others, her movements calm and focused. She saw openings the enemy overlooked. She shouted warnings, guided soldiers, and gathered important data whenever she could. Mason pushed forward toward the tall council tower in the center of the city. He knew the Dominion leaders were inside. If he reached them, the war could change. Human soldiers formed a protective circle around him as they moved through the corridors. Dominion defenders tried to stop them but were pushed back. At last, Mason reached the main chamber. The doors opened with a heavy sound. Inside, the Dominion Council sat in fear. Their eyes were wide, their hands shaking. The leader stood. "General, you cannot do this. You cannot stand in the heart of the Dominion." Mason stepped onto the platform slowly. "I can, and I am." He looked at each of them. "You struck Earth. You killed our people. You ignored every chance for peace." The leader's voice trembled. "If you destroy us, chaos will follow across the Dominion. Billions will suffer." Mason's voice was steady. "Then surrender, end this, stop your fleets, lay down your weapons, accept responsibility." The leader hesitated, fear spreading across his face. Outside, explosions echoed. Human forces pushed deeper into the city. Dominion resistance weakened. Finally, the leader lowered his head. "We surrender." The words carried through the entire command world. Dominion soldiers dropped their weapons. Human forces held their positions. Claire entered the chamber, breathing hard but smiling with relief. Laura joined them moments later. "It is over," Claire said softly. Mason looked at her. "No, the fighting is over. Now the rebuilding begins." The Dominion Council signed the agreement. They would pay reparations. They would disband their war fleets. They would never again threaten Earth. Hours later, Mason stepped outside onto the balcony of the tower. He looked at the sky, feeling the weight finally lift. Claire joined him. "Do you think they will keep their word?" Mason nodded slowly. "They will, because they know what happens if they do not." The Resolute stood on the landing platform with its lights shining bright. Human soldiers gathered in quiet victory. They had done what few believed possible. As the sun rose over the Dominion world, a new message spread across every ship and every outpost. Earth stands strong. Humanity does not break. And across the galaxy, species whispered a new truth. If you strike Earth, Earth will strike back. Mason watched the dawn grow brighter. He thought of the burned fields of Colorado. He thought of the people who had died. He thought of the long road ahead. But for the first time since the attack, he felt hope. Humanity had earned its place in the stars, not through conquest but through courage. And the galaxy would never forget it.